everyone. We are super excited to have Dr. Ramon Brown, who currently lives in the state of Maryland, on the My K-12 Career Show to share his stories with our viewers and with our listeners. Currently, Dr. Brown is working in the only public boarding school in the state of Maryland. Every other boarding school is a private boarding school. So he's in a very unique situation. He works as the music educator there. He's also a teacher mentor there. So we're super excited with him coming on the show, sharing his story, his journey. He has a very unique story and journey. And I know that you are going to get a lot out of what he shares today. And it also shows, without giving it away, the power of what teachers say to young people, good or bad, the impact that they can have on a young person's life. And so he has stories of teachers that absolutely should not have said what they said to him, and it negatively impacted his life. And he has stories of teachers that spoke life into his life, and it had a positive impact on his life. So I'm not going to give any more away at this time. Dr. Brown, thank you so much for coming on the show to share your story with our viewers and our listeners. What's going on in your life and in your K-12 career right now?
Thank you, first of all, Dr. Williams, for taking time out to just chill with a little brother like me. I'm very humbled and elated to be here. And in terms of what is going on with my K-12 career, my journey has been a journey of faith. You have people who basically kind of can map out what's going to happen with them, and they kind of meet those career objectives. You know, I did not do that. When I attended Grambling State University, I didn't say, hey, I'm going to be a teacher. As a matter of fact, my degree was in music performance. It wasn't in education. And so when I actually ended up getting in education, I had relocated back to my hometown, which is Savannah, Georgia. So I am from Savannah, Georgia. So basically, I had a pretty I come from a very nurturing mom in a single family home. But basically, around my second grade year, I actually began to have some issues. And I think now that I'm an adult, I look back and I know it was because I was upset because my father was not there. Pretty angry about it. But each day I would just press my way through, so to speak. And basically, I'm the youngest of 7 siblings. Okay. But this one particular day, I was just having really a rough day. And my second grade teacher said to me, the whole class, she was like, hey, it's time to go up to the board to do some problems. Well, this one particular day, she basically was talking under her breath, but I don't think she intended for me to hear. And basically what she said was, watch this boy get this problem wrong. And so when she said that, I was just devastated. And I basically looked up at her, I never forget it, and I said, hey, can I just take an F for this problem? And I just walked back to my seat.
What grade were you in?
That was second grade.
Wow.
And so at that time, I was just so devastated. Kids laughed at me, and then she kind of continued to ridicule me, you know, because I used to suck my thumb. So, of course, I'm crying and sucking my thumb, and now I'm being called a baby and all this kind of stuff. And so at that point, I decided, I was like, I hate school. I'm not ever coming back. And so you saw when I reached out to you, I mentioned that I dropped out of school in second grade. And a lot of times people are like, that can't be serious. No, I actually dropped out of school in second grade, and it was pretty easy to do because my mom would usually drop me off in the morning, and she would sit in the car, wait for me to get in the building, then she would pull off, like most parents still do to this day.
Right.
But what I did was I just was like, okay, well, I'm just going to wait for my mom to pull off. And so when she pulled off, I just walked back out of the building. And I lived not too far from the school. Long story short, I walked home. We had this little shed back in the back of our house. I would just go sit in that shed. That's where we kept all our bicycles and lawnmower, all that stuff. And I would just sit in that shed every day, which is really crazy, right? But I was happy because I didn't want to be back with that teacher anymore.
Right.
So long period of time kind of just elapsed. And one day I believe my mom was maybe not at work or something. And I heard her voice telling somebody like, and I want this moved out of the yard and da, 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 da. And she pulled open the shed, and there I was. And like, I just saw my whole life flash in front of me, right?
Sure.
Basically, having a Southern mother, my mom's like, boy, you must be out your mind. I know this is not my child who I just dropped off to school some hours ago.
Right.
You know, and I began to cry and share with her, you know, why I didn't want to go to school. Long story short, she basically, you know, tucked me in the house, wiped me off, fed me, all that type stuff, and took me back to the school. And a lot of people, truancy and all that stuff, it was prevalent, but the technology pieces of it was not as it is today. And so I'm sure that there were a couple of phone calls to my house or something.
Yeah, but not like now.
Yeah, but basically, when I got back to school, I had missed so many days that I automatically was going to be retained.
Okay.
Um, and so I literally dropped out of school for probably like a month. And in my
Okay.
mind, people say that's playing hooky or something, but I'm like, no, I dropped out. In my mind, I was like, I am not going back, bro. Like, I do not want to
Right.
ever go there. Well, to add insult to injury, basically, after that, after I was retained or whatever, my mom sat me down one day and she said, hey, I want to share something with you. But before I share this with you, I want you to know that there is nothing wrong with you. And I said,
Absolutely.
okay. And basically she said, doctors told me when you were an infant that you were mentally retarded and that you were not going to walk, you were not going to talk, you
Wow.
were not going to grow. You just basically were going to be a vegetable. She said, but I just felt like you were going through some things. And she said, I'm just sharing this with you. She said, but again, son, there's nothing wrong with you. She said, I don't think there's anything wrong with you because you can walk, you can talk, you're doing all the things that they said you could not
Yeah,
do.
all the things they said you couldn't do, you doing.
But what happened was, I come from, again, a place where you stay in your place. So, of course, I had a lot of questions. But, of course, I'm not questioning her. Like, I'm definitely not questioning my mom, right?
Right.
And so what happened was those thoughts got the better of me. And so after a while, they began to fester even more. And so there was a point where there was something starting to tell me, yes, you are. You are indeed that way.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Wow.
and so this is where you probably heard when I reached out to you, I said for many years of fighting that because there was this inward battle. And so I never ever shared it with anybody. I just fought through. But when I went through schools, anytime I took a test, anytime I had to learn or what have you, that voice was always
That
there.
negative self-talk. Yeah.
Yeah. And then basically what happened was when I got in third grade after repeating the second grade, I met a teacher who I'll never forget named Miss Thomas. And Miss Thomas basically shook my hand first day of school, third grade. She said, hey, I'm going to be a third grade teacher. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with you. I don't know why she said that, but
Wow.
it just permeated and stayed with me. Although I didn't understand everything back then, but basically what she did was she began to speak life into me throughout the whole year. And she
Wow.
was like, you really are a smart kid. And so the last day of school, she says, one thing I got to tell you. And I said, what's that, Miss Thomas? She said, before you leave this world, I want you to get a doctorate degree. And I
No.
and I said, a doctorate? What's that? She said, it's like the highest degree you can get. And she said, I believe you can get one. And so that stuck with me for years
Wow.
and years and years. Long story short, when I ended up going to Grambling State University, I was having really a rough day. And literally, I was an adult at this point. I'm fighting back, talking once before. I never talked back to this voice that would say things to me. And so I think that's why I am actually just really cool with the underdogs in life. I like people who people look at and can kind of just size them up and be like, yeah, that person's not going to make it. Because definitely I've been through that type of thing so many times in my life. And you have a lot of times where people will look at you. And if you don't look a certain way, you don't talk a certain way, you almost written off immediately at that point. And people are not willing to take that chance with you. Well, with that being said, the school that I worked at is a boarding school. So it's a public boarding school. So there's a
Okay.
student life component and there's an academic component. So I ended up dealing with the student life side, ended up becoming one of the lead administrators over there. But then it's time for me, like I'm still having this desire to do and find out what I can do with school leadership. So I was like, it's not going to happen here. So of course, I look all the way across the whole world and I go and look into Denver public schools.
Okay.
I get hired to go and work for Denver Public Schools as a dean of culture. And so actually went up to Denver, got there. I was the only Black man in my entire school. That was the first time for me ever experiencing something like that. Long story short, it didn't work out. It wasn't healthy for me.
Oh,
It
was it?
wasn't. And I ended up coming back to the East Coast and basically again in the situation where it's like, well, I came back now, Lord, why can I not find a job again? Until one day I saw an administrator who was a science teacher at the school when I was the music teacher. He saw me and he said, you are the person that started music at the school. Like, we need you back here. And so basically I was like, yeah, but you remember what happened. And I was like, I remember working on the student life side. I was successful, but I don't know about this academic side. Basically, I took a chance and got on the academic side and came back to the school in the exact same position. But when I came back to the school, about 5 weeks later, this man who saw me was like, I need a principal for summer school. He said, Dr. Brown, you are the principal. And I was like, really? And so I said, I don't know. I said, I'm kind of leery about still being here, but tell me, why would you ask me that? And he said, well, a couple of things. He said, you are very firm and fair and consistent. He said, you're very strong at building relationships with all stakeholders, whether that's staff, students, parents, what have you. And the middle school actually needs some structure, and you are the person that can give the school that structure for the summer. And I said, and you believe that? He said, yes. He said, I know your potential. But when I got the chance to do the summer principal, I really took it to heart, and a lot of people was like, well, it's just summer. I was like, no, for me, you don't understand. This is a whole platform that has been spiritually opened up for me to do so. And with that being said, after summer school ended, there was successful. I had 100% promotion rate, things of that nature, shifted the culture. The kids were a little rambunctious, but I created this thing called CIA, which stands for Call in Action. And I also implemented it with my staff and with the students. And so everybody was on the same page. Hey, this is what we got to do this summer. Dr. Brown wants to see you caught in action, meaning that you're following the code, walking the hallways, homework procedures. If we go to a trip this Friday, well, we went on trips every Friday, but if we go on this Friday, you have not done what you needed to do, well, you already know you're probably not going to be considered for the trip. So before we even get to that Thursday evening, how about we just do what we need to do in advance? And if you're always caught in the act, you won't have to play like you're in the act. And so it was just that type thing. And then after that happened, I basically was asked to do PLCs throughout the school year for professional development. We have that every Friday. And then the next thing this wonderful man who saw this potential in me, he was like, I'm done, and left the school. So I'm like, wow, like that was my person who advocated for me. Like I'm all in the trenches all by myself. But then spiritually, I knew that ultimately God was the one that orchestrated all of that. And I had to lean back on God where my help came from. And I was asked to be a mentor of teachers. And I said, y'all want me to mentor teachers, which is really funny or what have you. But I've been pretty successful in that. It has been very rewarding.
Is that what you do now?
I am the music teacher, but I do mentor some teachers, but I'm actually praying and hoping that they will allow me to mentor teachers next year altogether. So
what school district is this? Is this Baltimore City or?
It's not Baltimore City. We operate just like Baltimore City. It is the only public boarding school in Maryland. It's called the Seed School of Maryland.
The Seed School, yeah. Okay.
So, and it's sort of like its own district, if you would. But I actually have had an opportunity to just come back and kind of just situate myself. And of course, there's a lot of different changes with new administration, all those things. But I have been very fortunate. We have a whole slew of new teachers. And a lot of times, some of the veteran teachers are saying like, hey, the kids are changing and what have you. But again, because I have that ability to establish those relationships, they're saying, and how in the world is it that even the new kids, because the school goes from 6th through 12th. So the kids who are now my 11th and 12th grade students, they were my 6th and 7th grade students when I used to be the dorm manager prior to me going to Denver.
So what year did you actually get fully certified?
Probably 2022.
Oh, is that right? You have a long journey. Okay.
Well,
it also shows the power of perseverance, like you never gave up. So right now, what are you currently doing right now in your career?
I am a music teacher / mentor teacher. And so I mentor new teachers that come into the school.
Okay. How long you been in that role?
I've been in that role since September of 2022.
Okay, so you just started this year. Okay. How's your year going? Because right now, as we speak, because it's April of 2023, so y'all might have what, two months left in school?
About 2 months left, yeah.
So how's your year going?
The year has been it's been a year of just kind of ups and downs. I mentioned to you prior to this that we've had some different changes in school leadership. Okay. And so that has definitely rocked the boat a little bit. The other part is when I actually started back working at that school in September of 2021. Just on the music teacher position, I got back in September, and then maybe like in March or something, I was asked to be like the summer school principal for the school. And then after I did the summer school component, I was then asked to do some of the professional developments on Fridays. And then I was asked to do the new teacher mentoring.
It's 2023 as we do this episode. But let's say hypothetically, after we do this episode, I don't see you for the next 5 years. And let's fast forward to 2028. Where is Dr. Ramon Brown in 2028? Where do you see yourself and where do you want to be?
Dr. Ramon Brown sees himself in 2028 as a motivational speaker. I've been a certified life coach for probably 10 or more years already.
Mhm.
And it's sort of like I just didn't, I kind of put it on the shelf a little bit, but I've always been the person that people come to and talk to. And everybody is always saying like, you always have an answer, but I've always had a desire. And I think it's because of my upbringing and some of the obstacles that I had to navigate through. I've always had a desire to see people meet their objectives. And so that's why the mentoring piece is very important to me. I'm very passionate about it because I don't want people to ever experience what I went through. And the development piece, we always talk about support and development, especially in the school system, but are we truly, truly, truly giving support and development for people? And as I stated to you before, I have this platform called When Relations Don't Ship. But are the relations really shipping? Are we really meeting student achievement? Are we utilizing that data to make those informed instructional decisions that we say we are? But I also have a desire to build an all-boys school in my hometown. And I wanted to be an all-boys school where primary grades maybe from K-3, because I believe that those are very foundational years.
Yeah.
Those are also years that impacted me as a young man. Those are also years that if you can get those little boys settled and comfortable and establish those relationships and confidence within those little boys are going to do fine in secondary school. And those little boys are going to grow up into be young men and be productive.
That's great. You actually really brought up some great ideas. Obviously, the all boys schools is definitely needed, and you hit it on the head. As someone that's been a principal at every level, elementary, middle, and high school, that foundational piece at the elementary level is so critical. And you've also given some really good examples of how much teachers have an impact on young people, and it can be positive and it can be negative. And so
Absolutely.
I just hope that resonates with our viewers, because what we speak in the children can be life-giving or it can be soul-destroying. And so we want to make sure that we are giving life to our young people. And I really appreciate you sharing that as well. So again, I just want to thank you, Dr. Brown, for coming on the My K-12 Career Show and just sharing your journey with our viewers, with our listeners. But before you leave, could you please give our viewers some parting words of wisdom? Tell us how we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay, thank you. Well, in terms of parting words of wisdom, one of my favorite scriptures that says, so does a man think in his heart, so is he. And so if you think that you are excellent and that you are meeting people in the right way and you're able to go to sleep at night, because I have to reflect each day for me. I have to look and say, did I treat my students right, or did I treat my colleagues right? And if I can't go to sleep in peace, then clearly I have not done my justice, right? And so when I say, so does a man think it, so is he, sometimes when we constantly seeing recurring situations or issues coming up in our lives, it's because we are the one that has the solution to that. But in terms of how you want to connect with me, I would love for people to connect with me. You can reach me at rfbrownconsulting@gmail.com, or you could reach me at ramonbrown4@gmail.com. And so I am so thankful for where I am at now, a person who can look in the mirror and actually be in love with the man that they see and know that that man is definitely here for a reason and for a purpose and for a time as such. So again, I thank you and the viewers for just taking time out to hear from a little boy like me.
Well, thank you. And also I want to say the way we connected was through LinkedIn. So those of you that are watching, you can also reach Dr. Brown through LinkedIn as well. So thanks again, Dr. Brown, for coming on the show. We wish you all the best, and I'm so grateful that you were willing to share your story.
I definitely would love to stay in contact with you. And again,
100%.
I appreciate you and wish you the best, and I know that you're going to do great things.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I believe it. I receive it, and I wish it right back to you.
And I receive it too, brother.
Absolutely, my brother. All the best.
All right. Be blessed. See you soon.